Gwinnett County Police, they are looking for answers tonight after a man was found shot and killed in the parking lot of a Snellville church early this morning. That discovery coming as a shock to neighbors.
July 23, 2025, 6:00 a.m. in the morning. A passerby pulls into the parking lot of Cannon United Methodist Church in Snellville, Georgia. It's early. The sun is just starting to rise. Everything looks normal, peaceful, quiet. But then they see it. A body, lying in the parking lot, motionless. They call 911, police rush to the scene, and what they find shakes this entire community to its core. The victim is 28-year-old Oscar Cruz, a father, a husband, a man who should have been home with his family, but instead, he's here, dead, in a church parking lot. This wasn't an accident, this wasn't a random act of violence, this was brutal, this was planned, and the way it happened, it's going to leave you speechless. Welcome to our channel. Before we go any further, drop your city in the comments right now. Let me know where you're watching from, and subscribe. I want to hear from you. Oscar Cruz was 28 years old. He was born in 1997 and lived in Lawrenceville, Georgia. To his family, Oscar wasn't just another person, he was everything. His sister Jessica described him as a light in our lives, a devoted father, and truly one of the sweetest souls you could ever meet. And she meant every word. Oscar was a father to a 4-year-old boy named Hendrix. That little boy was his whole world. Anyone who knew Oscar knew that his son came first, always. He worked hard to provide for Hendrix. He spent every moment he could with him. He made sure his son knew he was loved. Family members said Oscar had a smile that could light up a room. He was kind, he was generous. He was the type of person who showed up for the people he cared about. His presence made a difference. At the time of his death, Oscar was living with his wife in their townhouse on Gin Blossom Court in Lawrenceville. It was their home, a place where they were building a life together. A place where they imagined raising Hendrix and watching him grow up. But life isn't always simple, and Oscar's life was no exception. While Oscar was a devoted father and husband, there were parts of his life that existed in the shadows. Police testimony suggests that Oscar may have been involved in activities related to drugs, either selling them or collecting payment for them.
Oscar Cruz was going to either sell drugs to the individual or get paid back for some drugs he fronted them prior.
The exact details remain unclear, but what we do know is that these activities put him in contact with dangerous people. This doesn't make Oscar a bad person. Life is complicated. People make choices for reasons we may never fully understand. Maybe it was about survival. Maybe it was about providing for his family. Maybe he was just trying to get by in a world that didn't give him many options. What matters is that Oscar was a human being, a father who loved his son, a man who mattered to the people around him, and on the night of July 22, 2025, the choices he made, or the people he trusted, led him down a path he couldn't escape. Because sometimes the people you think you know are the ones who hurt you the most. And for Oscar Cruz, that truth would cost him his life. July 22, 2025, 1:00 a.m. Most people are asleep at this hour. The streets are quiet. The world feels still. But Oscar Cruz is awake, and he's about to make a decision that will change everything. Oscar pulls into the parking lot of a Waffle House in Gwinnett County. It's the kind of place that stays open all night, a spot where people grab a late meal, where truckers stop for coffee, where the lights are always on. But Oscar isn't here for food. He's here to meet someone. Waiting for him in the parking lot is a car. Inside that car are several people, and according to police testimony, Oscar gets in. No hesitation, no argument. He climbs into the vehicle, and they drive off together. Now, here's where things get murky. What was this meeting about? Why did Oscar agree to get into that car, and who were these people? Police believe the meetup was connected to some kind of transaction. The exact details aren't fully clear, but investigators think it involved drugs. Either Oscar was selling them, or he was owed payment for drugs he'd already provided. Whatever the reason, it was enough to bring Oscar out in the middle of the night to meet with these individuals. But here's the thing, Oscar knew them. This wasn't a meeting with strangers. These were people he had some kind of relationship with, people he thought he could trust. And that's what makes what happens next so much worse. The group doesn't stay at the Waffle House. They drive, and their destination? Oscar's own home on Gin Blossom Court in Lawrenceville. Think about that for a second. Oscar brought these people to his house, the place where his wife was, the place where he was supposed to be safe. Why would he do that? Was he trying to settle a debt? Was he planning to make a deal? Or did he have no idea what was really about to happen? We may never know the full answer. But what we do know is that when they arrived at that townhouse, everything went wrong. Oscar's wife was home. She had no idea her husband was pulling up with a group of people. She had no idea that in the next few minutes, her entire life was about to fall apart. Because what happened inside that house wasn't a simple transaction. It wasn't a quick exchange of money or goods. It was something far worse. It was a home invasion, a robbery, a kidnapping, and the beginning of a nightmare that would end in a church parking lot with Oscar's body riddled with bullets. But we're not there yet. First, we need to talk about what happened inside that house, because the terror that unfolded on Gin Blossom Court that night is something Oscar's wife will never forget. So what did these people do when they got inside? And how did a meetup turn into one of the most violent crimes Gwinnett County has ever seen? When Oscar and the group arrived at his townhouse on Gin Blossom Court, his wife was upstairs taking a shower. She had no idea what was happening downstairs. No idea that her husband had just walked into the house with people who were about to turn their lives upside down. And then everything exploded. The suspects didn't waste time. They grabbed Oscar and restrained his hands with duct tape. He was bound, helpless, unable to fight back. Then one of them went upstairs. They found Oscar's wife in the shower and forced her to come downstairs at gunpoint. She was terrified, confused, and when she saw her husband tied up, she knew this wasn't going to end well. The suspects tore through the house. They were looking for something. Money, drugs, anything valuable, and they found it. According to police reports, they stole $3,000 in cash and drugs from the home. But even after getting what they came for, they weren't done. Detective David Early from the Gwinnett County Police Department later testified in court about what happened next, and his words are chilling.
They told her this would be the last time that she saw her husband and to kiss him goodbye.
Let that sink in. They made her say goodbye. They made her watch as they prepared to take him, and in that moment, she knew. She knew what was coming. She knew her husband wasn't coming back. Oscar was dragged out of his home, forced into the car, and they drove off, leaving his wife behind, traumatized, terrified, and completely helpless. She couldn't call for help right away. She couldn't stop them. All she could do was stand there, replaying those words over and over in her mind. Kiss him goodbye. This is the last time you'll see him. Where were they taking Oscar? What were they planning to do? And why, after already stealing the money and drugs, did they feel the need to take him with them? The answers to those questions are as brutal as they are heartbreaking. Because what happens next isn't just a crime, it's an execution. And the place they chose to leave Oscar's body? A church parking lot, a place meant for peace and prayer. But there was no peace for Oscar Cruz that night. The church parking lot was empty, dark, no witnesses, no one around to hear what was about to happen. And that's exactly why they chose it. Oscar was shot 17 times. Let me say that again, 17 times. This wasn't just murder, this was overkill, this was rage. This was someone making absolutely sure Oscar wouldn't survive, because when you shoot someone that many times, it's not just about killing them. It's about sending a message. It's about making them suffer. And when it was over, they left him there, his body abandoned in the parking lot like he was nothing, like his life didn't matter, like the father, the husband, the son he was, meant nothing at all. July 23rd, 2025. 6:00 in the morning. A passerby pulls into the church parking lot and sees something that doesn't belong. At first, they're not sure what they're looking at, but as they get closer, the horror sets in. It's a body. They immediately call 911. Within minutes, police are on the scene. Officers from the Gwinnett County Police Department arrive and begin processing the area. Crime scene investigators take photos, they collect evidence, they try to piece together what happened. But one thing is already clear. This was brutal, this was planned, and whoever did this wanted Oscar dead. The news spreads quickly. Neighbors wake up to police tape and flashing lights. Families who worship at Cannon United Methodist Church are in shock. This is their safe space, their sanctuary, and now it's a crime scene. Abigail Gonzalez, who lives next door to the church, couldn't believe it when her husband texted her that morning. "There's a body at the church," he wrote. She has 2 young children who play outside near that parking lot all the time. The thought that something so violent could happen so close to home terrified her. Matt Hale, another neighbor, said it was the last place he'd expect to see something like this. "You always hear it's a random event," he said, "but to the people that are impacted by it, it's not random. It's their life." And he was right, because for Oscar's family, this wasn't just another news story. This was their reality, their nightmare. So here's my question for you. What kind of person does this? What kind of monster takes a father from his family and leaves him to die in a church parking lot? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think. Because the hunt for Oscar's killers is just beginning. As soon as police identified Oscar's body, they knew they had to move fast. Detectives from the Gwinnett County Police Department began interviewing witnesses, collecting evidence, and trying to figure out who did this. The first person they spoke to was Oscar's wife. She was still traumatized from what she'd witnessed, but she gave investigators critical details. She described how the suspects had entered their home, how they'd bound Oscar's hands with duct tape, how they'd held her at gunpoint. She told them about the money and drugs that were stolen, and most importantly, she told them about the chilling words they'd said before taking her husband away. Detectives began tracing Oscar's movements from the night before. They discovered he'd met up with a group of people at a Waffle House in Gwinnett County around 1:00 a.m. Video footage from the restaurant showed Oscar getting into a car with several individuals. From there, the trail led back to his home on Gin Blossom Court. Investigators started identifying the people in that car, and one name kept coming up: Raymond Cooper. Cooper was 34 years old, and he had a violent criminal history. This wasn't his first run-in with the law, not even close. He had previous charges for armed robbery, assault, and weapons offenses. He was the kind of person who didn't just commit crimes, he escalated them. At first there was some confusion. Another name surfaced early in the investigation: Michael L. Golden, better known as Boona, a rapper with ties to Chicago's Only the Family crew. Golden had his own violent past, including charges for robbery, assault, and even a shootout at Cumberland Mall in 2020. Some people thought he might be involved, but as detectives dug deeper, they realized Golden wasn't the one they were looking for. The primary suspect was Raymond Cooper. And he wasn't alone. There were others in that car, others who participated in the home invasion, others who watched as Oscar was taken and killed. But here's the problem. After the murder, Cooper disappeared. He went off the grid. No phone activity, no sightings, nothing. The manhunt was on. Gwinnett County Police put out alerts, they contacted other agencies, they followed every lead they could find. But Cooper stayed one step ahead. Weeks turned into months, and with every day that passed, Oscar's family wondered if justice would ever come. Where was Raymond Cooper, and would he ever be caught? Months passed. Raymond Cooper was still out there, still free, and for Oscar's family, every day without an arrest felt like another injustice. Oscar's wife was trying to rebuild her life while carrying the trauma of that night. His son Hendrix was growing up without his father, and his sister Jessica was left wondering if the person who killed her brother would ever face consequences. Jessica knew she had to do something. The funeral expenses were piling up, and Hendrix needed support. So she set up a GoFundMe campaign with a simple message: Oscar was a light in our lives, a devoted father, and truly one of the sweetest souls you could ever meet. The response was overwhelming. Friends, family, and even strangers donated. Within days, the campaign raised over $15,000. It was a sign that people cared, that Oscar's life mattered. But no amount of money could bring him back. And still, Raymond Cooper remained on the run. Then, finally, the breakthrough came. Detectives received a tip that Cooper had been spotted in DeKalb County, just a short drive from where Oscar was killed. Police moved quickly. They coordinated with local law enforcement, set up surveillance, and waited for the right moment. And when that moment came, they didn't hesitate. Cooper was arrested without incident. No chase, no shootout, just a quiet takedown that ended months of searching. He was transported to the Gwinnett County Jail and booked on a long list of charges: malice murder, felony murder, first-degree home invasion, armed robbery, kidnapping, false imprisonment, aggravated assault, and aggravated battery. Each charge represented a piece of the horror Oscar and his family had endured, and each one carried serious consequences. Cooper was held without bond. He wasn't going anywhere. When news of the arrest spread, the community reacted with relief. Neighbors on Gin Blossom Court, where Oscar had lived, were grateful that the suspect was finally behind bars. Cherise Thomas, who lives nearby, told reporters she was glad the person was caught. "To hear this, it's kind of scary," she said. "I'm glad that the person was caught." But relief was mixed with fear, because even though Cooper was in custody, the damage was done. Parents were still cautious about letting their kids play outside. Doors were locked a little tighter, and the sense of safety that once defined the neighborhood had been shattered. Raymond Cooper was caught, but the case, it wasn't over. Because there were still unanswered questions, and Oscar's family deserved the full truth. Raymond Cooper is behind bars. The charges are stacked against him, but if you think this case is closed, think again, because there are still massive questions that need answers. First and most important, who else was in that car? We know Cooper didn't act alone. Oscar's wife saw multiple people. Detectives confirmed that several individuals were involved in the home invasion. So where are they? Why haven't they been arrested? Are they cooperating with police? Are they in hiding, or are they being protected as witnesses? The silence around the accomplices is frustrating, because if you were there that night, if you watched Oscar get bound and taken, if you drove him to that church knowing what was about to happen, you're just as guilty. Then there's the question of motive. Yes, $3,000 in drugs were stolen from Oscar's home, but does that really explain what happened next? Does that justify kidnapping him, driving him to a church, shooting him 17 times? It doesn't add up. Was there more to this than just money? Did Oscar owe a debt he couldn't pay? Was there bad blood between him and Cooper? Or did Oscar know something that made him a threat? And why a church? Was the location chosen because it was quiet and isolated? Or was there some kind of message being sent by leaving his body at a place of worship? There's also the bigger issue. How did Raymond Cooper, with his violent criminal history, remain free long enough to commit this crime? He had previous charges for armed robbery, assault, and weapons offenses. So how was he still on the streets? How did the system fail to stop him before he took another life? Oscar's family is left with all these questions. His wife is still dealing with the trauma of what she witnessed. His son Hendrix is growing up without his father, and his sister Jessica is trying to keep Oscar's memory alive while wondering if justice will ever truly be served. Because right now, justice feels incomplete. One arrest isn't enough. Not when there were others involved. Not when so many questions remain unanswered. Oscar Cruz deserved better, and his family deserves the full truth. Oscar Cruz's murder didn't just destroy one family. It sent shockwaves through an entire community. and it raises important questions about how we can prevent tragedies like this from happening again. Violent crime doesn't just take a life. It leaves behind trauma that lasts for generations. Oscar's wife will carry the memory of that night forever. Hendricks will grow up without his father. Jessica lost her brother, and the neighbors on Gin Blossom Court will never feel as safe as they once did. One of the biggest lessons from this case is the importance of recognizing dangerous patterns. Raymond Cooper had a violent criminal history. He'd been arrested before for armed robbery, assault, and weapons charges. So how was he still free to commit another crime? The system failed, and that failure cost Oscar his life. Communities need to be more vigilant. Neighborhood watch programs can help. Increased awareness can make a difference. But we also need systemic change. We need better tracking of repeat offenders. We need stronger intervention before someone with a violent past strikes again. Supporting victims' families is also critical. The GoFundMe campaign for Oscar's family raised over $15,000, which helped with funeral costs and support for Hendricks. But families shouldn't have to rely on donations alone. There need to be more resources available, financial, emotional, and psychological support for those left behind. Education and awareness matter. The more we talk about these issues, the more we can prevent them. So here's my final question for you. What do you think can be done to prevent crimes like this? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's have a real conversation about how we can make our communities safer. Oscar Alexis Cruz was 28 years old, a devoted father, a loving husband, a man his family described as a light in our lives, and one of the sweetest souls you could ever meet. But on July 23, 2025, his life was violently taken from him, shot 17 times and left in a church parking lot. The brutality of his murder is hard to comprehend, and the devastation it left behind is immeasurable. Oscar's wife witnessed horrors no one should ever have to see. His son Hendricks will grow up without his father's love and guidance, and his sister Jessica is left to keep his memory alive while fighting for justice. Oscar's story is a reminder of how fragile life really is, how quickly everything can be taken away, and how dangerous the world can be when violence goes unchecked. Raymond Cooper is behind bars, facing serious charges, but justice isn't complete. Not when there are still others involved who haven't been held accountable, not when so many questions remain unanswered. Oscar Cruz mattered. His life had value. He was more than just a victim. He was a father who loved his son, a man who tried to provide for his family, a person who deserved to live. And his story will not be forgotten. This case is a call for justice, not just for Oscar but for all victims of violent crime, for the families left behind, for the communities torn apart, and for the lives that could have been saved if the system had worked the way it should. Rest in peace, Oscar Cruz. Your memory lives on through your son, your family, and everyone who refuses to let your story fade away. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell icon so you never miss another case. And check out more stories right here on our channel. Until next time, stay safe and remember, every life matters.